Is Arizona running out of water? We are a desert. Yes, there's a lot of drama, articles, a whole lot of news going on about this. Everyone's freaking out and asking about it. What is happening with the water situation here in Arizona? Is there enough to go around? Should you even think of moving here? Are you going to move here and then not have enough water? We're covering all of that in this video today. We have a ton to cover about the water, so let's do this. There is so much news and drama and everyone's freaking out. Everyone's saying Arizona's out of water, running out of water, that there's no water left. So what's actually going on? We're diving right into that. So if this is your first time to the channel and you want to know everything there is to know about living in Phoenix, Arizona, or moving to Phoenix, Arizona, and like stuff like what's going on with our water here, then feel free to subscribe, click that bell for notifications so you can be the first to learn about what is happening here in Phoenix, Arizona. I've got my little co-host, the Corgi Bruce, over here today. He's chilling. But anyways, I'm a local real estate agent here. My name is Samantha, and I help people every single day, just like you, make their move to Phoenix, Arizona, and all those surrounding areas. And I absolutely love it. So if you are thinking of making a move, if you have questions, if you want to know more about like what is going on with this water drama or anything else about moving to Phoenix, Arizona, give me a call, shoot me a text, send me an email, connect with me on Instagram. All that information is linked below. Would love to answer any questions that you have and help you make a smooth move here to Arizona. Bruce would as well. So let's go ahead and jump into my laptop, share my screen with you, and go through all this information about what is actually happening with the water here in Arizona. Okay, well, as you can see, there is no limit to a whole bunch of articles talking about all the water shortage and all the drama going on with water here in Arizona. So there's a lot to cover. Now, the interesting thing about a lot of these articles is that they are written by sources that are not in Arizona. A lot of these are written by publications in totally different states. And a lot of the news that you're hearing is not local. It's not from states here. They haven't consulted with the professionals here. And so that's a huge part of what I want to share with you guys is just all the information of what's actually happening here directly from the Arizona Water Resources Department, from the Conservation Department, people who are actually in this every day and know what's realistically actually going on. So anyways, there's a lot of drama, but let's break it down and see what's actually happening. So one of the articles that I actually have here is from Arizona, which is helpful to actually know what is going on. And this article quotes a lot of the local experts and a lot of information directly from the conservation and information here in Arizona from a lot of those departments. So this kind of sums it up, but pretty much ignore the headlines. Arizona's water future is a lot brighter than they suggest. This is very accurate to what's going on right now, but we're actually going to break it down and show you why. So Arizona has a really significant amount of challenges. We are a desert. We are growing super fast. The climate is very hot. It is very dry and everything like that. But we're not on the brink of running out of water, even though that's what a lot of the way the articles and news has been portraying it, is that we're running out of water, that there's a drought and stuff like that. That's not actually the case. That's not really what's happening. So a lot of it is political and a lot of it is just kind of the scary news and stuff like that. But we actually do have a very large amount of water supply. So Arizona is kind of newer in terms of being a state. So we became a state in 1912 on February 14th. And we really didn't start growing a lot until the 60s and 70s. That's kind of when a lot of the growth here in Arizona happened. So because of that, a lot of our infrastructure, a lot of our water conservation, treatment, infrastructure for just housing and roads and plumbing and all of that is fairly new. It really, a lot of it didn't go in until the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So it's a lot newer than a lot of other cities. Because of that, there's a lot more innovation and our water treatment systems are very, very good, as well as the conservation systems. So I'll just kind of point out some of the main information in this article. And then if I actually got information that I got directly from the Water Management and Conservation Director when a meeting that we had, and he gave me some great information as well. So Arizona's growth and development can continue because there's been a lot of planning for decades and decades, and there continues to be. So that is a huge part of it. So there's a lot of regulatory measures, such as the Groundwater Management Act of 1980, this right here. So the Groundwater Management Act of 1980 assured a water supply managed by the Arizona Department of Water Resources. So basically this act ensured that we would have enough supply for 100 years. And that's reevaluated every 15 years. So every 15 years, we have to make sure that we have enough groundwater for 100 years, not only with the current amount of growth and current population of Arizona, but for all the projected growth that we have in the coming years. So they were thinking ahead. They planned ahead. Our population has exploded. Arizona is big, and the Phoenix metro has grown a lot. Despite us growing from 1 million to 7.1 million since 1950, our water usage has actually been reduced in the past decades, which is kind of crazy, but it's because of the water recycling, the water treatment, but also a lot of conservation that has been placed, and a lot of it has been voluntary. So we'll kind of get into it a little bit, but there's regulations on any new builds, the type of, systems that they have, the low flow toilets, the water efficient fixtures and stuff. But also a lot of people have, stopped planting as much grass and everything. There's a lot of voluntary initiatives that have been put in Arizona that people have just done for the past few decades that have made such a huge impact, which is really cool, so that the government doesn't have to force those on us. It's been a lot of voluntary, which has made a huge difference. So even though Phoenix does have some water scarcity, it's not the entire Phoenix metro. So a lot of the outskirts area of Phoenix, places like Santan Valley, Maricopa City, New River, Buckeye, these places that are kind of all along the edges and stuff might be affected differently than the main metro areas. And we're going to get into a little bit more what that actually means, what that looks like, how it's affecting construction and stuff, because there are effects of what's happening. And we're going to be diving into that a little bit more with some of the slides and information coming up. But Phoenix actually has the ability to grow responsibly for the next 20 to 30 years based on all the work, the planning, the groundwater initiatives, and everything that has been put in place by Arizona to ensure that we don't get to that point where we run out of water, or even where there's a very severe drought. They have planned ahead for this to ensure that that doesn't happen. So we have a ton of water underground that we've been storing for years. So as you can see right here, the state actually has 5 times more water stored than it consumes. And they've never mandated municipal or residential restrictions in history. So like I said, there has been effects on the water and stuff like that. All of this has been voluntary. All the initiatives, everything that they have started and put in place has all been voluntary from the residents. We've chosen just to be responsible with our water. We've replaced our fixtures. We've been a lot more green with our landscaping and how we handle water. And so we've never had anything mandated with the water. And it doesn't look like we will anytime soon because of all the initiatives and regulations that everyone is jumping on board with and willingly doing. So that makes a huge difference too, when you're doing it because you want to, rather because the government is telling you that you have to. And we in Arizona know, we live here. It's a desert. We want to be responsible with our water, and we take a lot of pride in making sure that we are not wasteful, that we are using it responsibly, so that we don't get in this position in the future where it is really bad or where we are running out of water. So we're actually a lot better prepared than other states. And we have Arizona has a multifaceted portfolio of water supplies. We also have the most advanced programs for managing groundwater in the United States. We also have a lot more strict management with our groundwater, but we also, like I said, require 100-year supply guaranteed with that groundwater, and that affects kind of everything moving forward in terms of building and of growth. That is a lot stricter than most other states. And we also have a lot of diverse ways that we get our water, rather than some places who are solely dependent on one water source, like California or Nevada are a lot more dependent on the Colorado River than we are, because we get our water from multiple different sources. So we'll get into this a little bit of how much Arizona's water comes from the Colorado River versus some other rivers versus groundwater and stuff like that. But Nevada, for example, is 100% reliant on the Colorado River. And California, they have about 60% of their water that comes from the Colorado River. So don't have the same amount of infrastructure and planning that Arizona did. Like I said, we have some of the most advanced water use and recycling, as well as planning in the country. So let's get into some of this information that we got directly from the Water Conservation Department and stuff. And there's a ton of links down below if you want information on landscaping, on water usage, on more stats and information. If you're like really into the data, there's a ton of links that I have below for you guys. And if you live here in Arizona and you want to learn like how you can be smarter with water, how you can lower your bill, what type of landscaping you do, you can literally, there's a number I've included below. You can text and they will tell you how to water, the types of plants that you have, and when to water and stuff. So there's a lot of cool information. Arizona is very open and very proactive in their information about water conservation, what we all can actively do to make sure that we don't get to the point where there is a limited water supply where they have to do restrictions. So where does our water come from? We do take some from Colorado River, about 40%. We also have, sorry, this is kind of hard to see. I should have chosen a different color, but the salt here, let me move my face out of the way too. The Salt and Verde River is about 58, close to 60% of the water as well. And then up here, we do have a little sliver of groundwater, which is 2%. Now our groundwater reserves, like I said, we've been storing and saving it. We do draw on that about 2%, but there is a huge supply so that if for some reason we get to the point where we can't use these rivers anymore, we do have a large supply that we can use for groundwater. That's kind of like our backup emergency reserve if we ever need it. It's nice to know it's there, but we're not in a position right now where we need that, which is kind of nice to have. It's there if you need. It's like fat pants. Like, I hope you don't have to use them, but they're there if you need them. So that's kind of our groundwater. And so hang on, I'm gonna move myself over here so the information's easier to reach. So like I said, we have a very advanced groundwater management system, and it's actually the cornerstone of sustainability and ensuring that our water is going to be enough for us for the next 100 years, like I said. So in 1980, we had the Groundwater Act, and that was to ensure that the groundwater uses are limited, to ensure that our leak rates, so there's a ton of water stored underground. It can be hard to see if there's any leakage or anything like that, but we also want to ensure that the leakage from our utilities has to be less than 10%. That is one of the lowest in the country. We are very, very proactive and very strict with how our water is managed and overseen to ensure that there's not a lack of it, which is really cool. So the utility rates need to be less than 10% with leaking, and the residential subdivisions have to demonstrate a 100-year supply of groundwater before construction. So a lot of the articles you've been seeing are talking about construction's halting and no more, places can be built and stuff like that. So that's not necessarily the case. They have to demonstrate that in order to build this community, they have to show they have 100 years of groundwater supply, and that can either come from an approved utility provider, so APS or SRP, someone who has that water supply approved for that community, or they can apply for what's called a certificate, which can give them approval for that water. Now, in a lot of these outlying areas, like I said, Maricopa, Buckeye is one you're hearing about a lot as well. They're not issuing new certificates. So you can't build a new community with a certificate. If you can get an agreement from a utility provider, a water provider who has that 100 years of groundwater approved, baked into their plans, you can still get that, but they can't get new certificates. So there are still like hundreds of thousands of homes that have been approved and are still being built. There are still tons of homes and communities available being built that have access to the water. They're just being more restrictive with the new certificates that they provide because we don't want to get to a situation where we do have a lack of water. Right now we're fine, but we want to be proactive as we have been for the past decades to make sure that we're not in a position where we do run out of water, if that makes sense. So what does 100 years of water mean? Sorry, I have to keep moving myself around the screen. I did not plan ahead very well. So you have to show that water of sufficient quality, not just that it's there, but that it has the quality and legal availability to cover 100 years of expected demand, not just current demand, but expected demand. We know we're growing. We know there's a lot more happening with Arizona. And the designated provider or certificate, like I said, are the two ways to get it. The designated provider, for us, it's like APS, SRP, those companies that have the water and that protect all the water that the current customers and the planned growth are going to have. And they have to show that they have enough for a 100-year of projected demand. So a community that wants to be built, say a builder comes in, they want to build, this beautiful community with 200 new homes. They have to either get approval from a designated provider, which is the most common, or like I said, they can apply and get a certificate, and it analyzes site-specific conditions to show that there's sufficient groundwater to support 100 years of projected demand. So designated providers like the city of Phoenix, the city of Scottsdale, the city of Mesa, it's a lot of cities. They have existing certificates that are not impacted by this new memorandum. Like I said, some of the outlying areas, New River, Buckeye, potentially a little bit of Goodyear, those ones are affected, but a lot of the main metro cities are not. And we do still have certificates that are being offered, as well as designated providers are still approving new communities. So there is still a ton of growth, and they do have plenty of water projected to provide for that expected demand in the coming years. Phoenix is growing like crazy. Like I said, we went from 1.1 million to 7.1 million in Arizona and in this Phoenix metro area. But even though sorry, I'm just moving myself all over the screen. So we've actually had a 30% reduction in water usage over the past 30 years, even though our population has gone up. So the blue lines here show our population going up. The green line actually shows the water demand, and this shows our water production. So it's gone up a little bit, down a little bit, but we're actually higher than we were several decades ago. So there is a good amount of water we have planned ahead. And with these initiatives that people are doing, changing landscaping, not watering as often, not just leaving your water on, low flow utilities and taps and everything like that, we have drastically reduced our water usage, even though there's a lot more of us, which is super cool. Now this shows kind of how our water is used. It's mostly residential, a little commercial, and some landscape meters. And if we break that down even farther, a lot of it is single family outdoors. So watering, landscaping, agriculture, things like that. So just by reducing the amount that you're watering, if you want to have grass, that's fine. A lot of people here have grass. I know like places like Nevada and stuff, they've mandated like no grass and everything like that. With here, a lot of it is people just learning how to water their yards properly. Now not everyone has giant yards. A lot of people have gone to artificial turf to save a lot of money, in desert landscaping. Like I said, there's tons of links below with that information. If you live in Arizona and you're thinking of lowering your watering bill and want to make some of those changes, there's a lot of resources below. But even just watering not as often as you need to, not overwatering, not leaving things on, that makes a huge difference. So the outdoor is the biggest use, single family residential indoor. You do have some multifamily commercial residential, industrial, and then landscaping. So that just kind of shows you where the water usage is going in Arizona. And talking about plans for the future, they are being very proactive and aware. We've been doing that for decades, and we're going to continue that into the future to ensure we're not in a position where there's not enough water or where they have to put restrictions on things. So I know this is like a lot of like nitty-gritty stuff if you're still watching the video perhaps, but a lot of the best management practices. So with builders, with new construction, there's very strict about, they need to use low flow toilets, they need to use water conserving fixtures and everything like that. Drought tolerant or native landscaping, restrictions on the utilization of, real grass versus artificial turf, irrigation efficiency standards and everything. So anything that is being built, anything new going in, there's a lot of these like stipulations and processes to ensure that that we're continuing to go down with our water usage, even though we're growing and there's a lot more people here. How can we help? Like I said, us in Arizona, we're very aware. We live in a desert and we take a lot of proactive steps not to be wasting water. And it's as simple as making sure you don't have leaks in your house, installing a low flow toilet or low flow fixtures with your shower or your sink, doing artificial turf instead of real turf, or doing desert landscaping. Like that alone will make such a huge difference. And it's not inconvenient. It's pretty small and easy fixes. And so there's a lot. So don't water more than twice a week. Your yard and stuff outside doesn't really need more than once a week. Like I said, there's links below if you want information. Check for leaks. If you've got leaks in your house, fix them. It's that simple. And then commit to efficient appliances and fixtures, like I talked about, those lower flow toilets, the sinks, the dishwashers, anything that uses water, even washers and stuff. We have a lot of really highly efficient water conservation options here. So just having those in your home, you can even, there's a cool number you can text, just like I said, to see how often that you water plants. You can choose desert landscaping instead of a yard if you want. It's also a lot less maintenance, so it's a lot less work for you. And there's a lot of different smart water devices, leak proofs, EPA, water sense labels, all of that different stuff that you can get involved. And like I said, there's tons of resources below with a lot more information, and you can even reach out to them. I included their contact information. Their contact information is below. If you actually want to reach out to them and ask them questions, get more information, follow them on social media, learn more, there's a ton of information. So Hopefully this information was helpful. We are not running out of water right now. It's not as dire or as scary as it may seem. So hopefully this was just helpful to get you informed to know what is actually happening with the water, what it looks like, what the next 100 years are, and everything like that. So we are good. We're okay. There is plenty of water. We have planned ahead, and we're going to continue to be proactive and manage our water well to ensure that we're not in a situation where we run out of water. Hopefully that information, I know it was a ton of info, but I hope it helps you get a better understanding of what is actually happening with the water here, that there's not a drought, that we're not running out of it, but we do need to be aware and responsible moving forward so that we don't get in a situation where there are mandates or we are running out of water. So have a great rest of your day. Bruce and I hope this information was helpful, and we'll see you in the next video.